What is going on, beautiful people? This is Anshul and Alex back with another video, and today we're going over the squat.
The squat is activity of daily life, or an ADL, which is basically, we need this for a lot of things that we do in our regular lifestyle. Some typical things we do is sitting in a chair, sitting on the toilet. Basically, anytime we're sitting down anywhere or even getting up from off of the floor, you do need to do somewhat of a squat. And so here are some ways that we can get better at that.
Today, we're gonna make sure that we set you up right for a squat, making sure we warm up correctly. We're gonna make sure that every stabilizer in this movement, every synergist in this movement will be activated and firing. And hopefully we can teach you today how to set a PR for your squat and feel really good doing it. When we're preparing for a squat or any type of movement in the gym, just like we referenced in our deadlift video, it's very important that we do a general warm up. It's not a specific warm up, general warm up, just getting the heart rate up. And then we're gonna get into activating, mobilizing, and potentiating, everything responsible for getting into that squat.
Hip car, or controlled articular rotation. Goal is that we're trying to move one joint through its entire full range of motion. So one way we can do that is first by raising the knee straight up in front, and then we're gonna externally rotate the hip as wide as we can. And then we're gonna add some internal rotation once we get that end point, and then we'll return all the way back up to neutral.
Act like we have a softball, a towel, whatever it is, squeeze right up in between that hamstring and that calf to keep that positioning the entire way through. And if you want to get extra creative, we can finish the hip car with an extra internal rotation at the end. Next, we're gonna get into a DNS star, where we're driving our right knee into the ground as hard as we can to activate our glute medius and our abductors. From there, we're gonna reach opposite ends of our hand and our foot to activate our core, internal obliques, external obliques, couple movements just like this. And if you wanna make it extra hard, you can have some weight on your wrists or your ankles.
When it comes to squatting, a lot of the times our ankles tend to prevent us from getting into a deep position. So we want to mobilize the ankle. A couple ways we can do that. Starting with a box, you just try to start taking your knee over your toe as best you can. If you're noticing any type of restriction in the back, or it's just tough to reach down, then you're gonna take a weight, add that on top of your knee, and then that's going to help push you into a slightly deeper position than you typically would go in just your body weight. As that gets easier, we'll increase the height to make it slightly more challenging. One of the biggest problems that people have when attempting this exercise is their heel starts to elevate, and then they start feeling a slight pinching on the front of the ankle. So just push the heel down and then drive that knee back over your toe, and you should start feeling a nice calf stretch.
The last movement that we're going over is a high box step up to potentiate our glutes at the bottom of our squat. This positioning of my foot, calf, and hamstring touching is the same position that I'm gonna have at the bottom of my squat. So high box step up, we're here, heel, big toe, pinky, tripod of weight on that foot, and we're getting up as hard as we can, back down. If you're having trouble with your balance, make sure that we use a band or something to hold on to while we do this exercise. Or just lower the height of the box, and all of a sudden, this movement got way easier.
A little bonus exercise we like to add in for squats is we like to also potentiate the internal rotators, because those muscles specifically help. Once we get below parallel in our squat, we must create tension in those internal rotators to prevent our knees from caving in, or that valgus shift.
All you need is the same box that you use or a bench. Grab a foam roller, lead with the heel, and squeeze as hard as you can. Bring it back to the center. You can do one leg at a time, or if you got that patterning down, you can do both legs at a time. Racking the squat. So Alex is gonna pull his shoulder blades back together to create a shelf for that bar. He's gonna get underneath the bar, laying that bar right on that shelf, knees right and feet right under the bar itself. We're gonna lift off and set up for our squat. A lot of people like to have routines for their squat. They take 1 or 2 steps. To start the squat, Alex is gonna create tension within his feet. He's gonna create tension within his core, and he's gonna slightly hinge back at the beginning, and then he's dropping down in that nice squat, keeping everything stacked, and he's coming right back up. So slight hinge, knees tracking over the toes, chest not out, just nice and tall, back squeezed, and perform that squat.
Typically, a lot of times when the barbell gets pretty heavy, a lot of people start complaining about having that pinching pain on top of the traps. All you have to do is you just actually have to pull down on the bar as opposed to shrugging up into it. And that's gonna give you a much better, safer position for that rack. Going through the squat mechanics, we really just wanna emphasize that our knees are tracking over our toes. We don't want our knees going outside the pinky toe or inside the big toe. We wanna make sure they're right square, right down the middle of the toes, almost like a landing strip. Biggest thing is that hip first movement. We wanna make sure the hips move with the torso at the same time. So we have that nice rigid brace in the core, and then making sure that that stays rigid throughout the entire squat.
The other type of squat, other than the high bar squat that we demoed before, is a low bar squat. So Alex is gonna get the bar a little bit lower on his back, hence the name. And then same thing, we're pinching the back, unracking the weight, staying nice and steady. So with the low bar squat is a shallower squat. It's not as quad dominant. It's actually more glute and hamstring dominant. So Alex is gonna demo it where you're going a little bit lower, a little bit wider stance as well, in a more of a power position type of lift. This is really good for people who are coming back from knee injury and want to start squatting again. This is gonna be what helps you out the most besides touchdown squats or something else. A hinge dominant low bar squat is what's gonna keep you healthy long term and emphasize the glutes and hamstrings in their biomechanical advantage.
When it comes to squatting, a typical bad cue that unfortunately a lot of trainers like to overuse is knees out. A better cue would actually be screwing your feet into the floor. And what that's gonna look like is he's gonna make sure he gets all 5 toes are pinned into the floor. And then the goal is we wanna make sure that that big toe stays down as his knees slightly rotate out. And that's gonna help create tension in the glutes. Typically what we see from that knees out cue is what's called valgus shift, which is once they get to the bottom of the squat and try to come up, their knees come in first before they externally rotate. And the way to fix that is to start by screwing the ground into the floor and make sure it's a hip dominated movement first. If when we're squatting, we got a little instability like Anshul's showing off, there's a couple things we can do. One is simply just lower the weight. The weight might just be a little too heavy for ourselves. 2, any general stability exercise for the hips will help balance out that shakiness and allow you to move up and down fluidly.
A big point that we want to make is that if we had to choose 2 exercises to program the general population or anybody that loves lifting or wants to live a healthy life, the squat and the deadlift are the 2 exercises that you must prioritize to live a long and healthy life.
On top of just the deadlift and the squat, there's a bunch of different variations that are within that. There's single leg squats, single leg deadlifts, wide stance, narrow stance. It all depends on what your goals are and what you're working towards. Show off. Thank you for tuning in today, guys. If you have any questions or comments, please hit us down in the comments. We'd love to hear what you have to say, and tune in next time. Peace.